It's been 25 years since the movie Scream was released and became an instant hit with critics and audiences around the world. Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson's knowing slasher spawned 3 sequels and set a young, hip and scary trend that immediately changed the landscape of cinema. Now with a new installment of the record-breaking saga on the way in 2022, this podcast will celebrate the original release and what came next, maybe with a few twists and turns along the way. I'm Alex James and this is the Woodsboro Podcast. Okay, let's get straight into this one. In terms of the inside story, I don't think it gets more inside than this. If you check the IMDb, then Richard Potter is credited as executive in charge of production on Scream. But it turns out he's much more than that. Firstly, he happens to be the person who read the script before anyone else. As the 25th anniversary of Scream is being celebrated, Richard Potter has been asked to contribute to a number of online articles about how Scream arrived at Dimension Films, where he was an executive for the company. Previously, Richard has said that the initial script for Scream came from a lady called Jennifer Gwartz at the production company Woods Entertainment, and then it landed with a Miramax exec called Bobby Cohen.
There is one thing I wanted to tell you. I have a new piece of information.
Okay, good.
I thought the facts came from Jennifer Gwartz.
Yes.
It didn't. Because of all these articles, I actually spoke to Bobby Cohen, who is the person who handed me the script.
Richard is really keen that the facts are clear and the necessary people get the necessary credit.
The facts came from Justin Dardas. It came directly from APA, from Kevin's agent.
That'll be Kevin Williamson's agent.
I mean, not that that's a huge alteration of the story in terms of the important facts for what happened. But as I've said, people are always taking credit for things that they didn't have anything to do with. So while our deal was with Woods Entertainment at the time, they're not the ones who sent us the script. They may have also sent us the script, but
Okay.
the copy that Bobby gave me didn't come from Woods. It actually came from Justin. Bobby told me he had read Kevin's other script, Killing Mrs. Tingle, which we eventually bought for him to direct, and the title got changed. Bobby had read that and just thought Kevin was a really good writer, so he'd stayed in touch with Kevin's agents. So when he heard that Kevin had a script coming out, he was leaning on Justin to give him a copy of the script. And Justin apparently didn't really want to because Bobby was on the Miramax side and what are they going to do with this movie? And I guess they didn't realize that at the time, especially, there wasn't really a difference between Miramax and Dimension.
Yeah. So people had read Killing Mrs. Tingle before Scream arrived.
Yes. Killing Mrs. Tingle was sold. I don't remember who owned it, but Kevin had sold that script. It just hadn't gotten made. And as I'm sure you know, you can have a career as a writer selling scripts to studios and they don't make them. As the writer, you have no power over what happens once they buy it.
Yeah.
Me personally, and even when I've written with partners, that keeps happening. I've sold 6 or 7, maybe 8 screenplays, to Warner Brothers and other studios like that. None of them have gotten made. But
is that financially worthwhile?
It's a living, but when you hear these big script sale numbers, the big number is if the movie gets made. So I have deals that sound like they're really impressive, but the upfront, you get paid this against that. The first number is what you get now for the sale against the real number that you're hoping for if the movie gets made. So, for example, I'm just using this number because it's the number from Kevin's sale, $400,000. In the case of something with a bidding war, he may have gotten that all up front, but chances are it was something like 150 against 4. So he got 150 up front and then the rest of it if the movie got made.
The industry announcement for the sale of Scream is online, and under the section price, it reads $400,000/$500,000.
I'm wondering if that meant 4 against 5, which
Okay.
is weird, that he'd only get 100 more if the movie got made. My memory of the sale is that it was 400, it wasn't 500. 4 against 5, and the movie got made would mean that he sold it for 500. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, and then would part of his deal at that point, would he then work in profit margins as well? I'm
sure, like most writers in their deal have some kind of back end, a point, 2 points. This having been a bidding war, I would imagine he did better than that on this. I mean, if we were having this conversation 25 years ago, I could have told you exactly what the deal was. On the set of Scream, he and I had some conversations about Scream 2, but that was like a wishful thinking. You don't know that you're going to get to make it. The movie came out in December. I want to say by the end of January, those conversations were now real. We're shooting in whatever it is, April, to get this movie out. Or no, we had to have been shooting earlier than that.
Because all of the stories you read do sort of give the impression that he'd planned for 3.
There was discussion of 3. The outline at the back of the original spec was of a second movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the second movie that we made. We discussed what he had in there, and there were elements of it that were really good and elements that were like, you're just like, yeah, I don't see that character really doing that.
Okay.
And he, but what he had really provided in that outline was the idea concretely that there was more to this story to tell. I think I told you this. Scream 2, I think, is the best movie in the franchise. And it has to be. In order for a franchise to work, the second has to be better than the first to be considered equal to it. Otherwise, there's no franchise.
Yeah.
Star Wars would not have become what it became if the second movie had been Return of the Jedi instead of The Empire Strikes Back. It's the second one makes you go, okay, there's really something here.
So here's the interesting thing that I've been thinking about in the last sort of half hour or so is, it's easy for me to go Eric Klosterman, location manager, Cynthia Bergstrom, costume designer, Mark Irwin, director of photography. What's your title?
On the movie, it's funny. I was just interviewed for the Hollywood Reporter, and the reporter asked me the same question. I said, my credit on the movie is executive in charge of production. I think I'm co-producer or executive producer on the second one. Executive in charge of production at most studios. I don't know how involved they actually are with the making of the movie at big studios, but Dimension, particularly at the time, there were only 2 executives on when we did the first Scream, just me and Andrew Rona. So I was there for everything. My function wasn't really that much different than a producer, as if I was the producer for the studio.
Yeah.
But my title was executive in charge of production. I was the person at the studio responsible for this movie.
Richard is all about the detail. It's important to him, and it's important to us, the fans. This is the stuff of Scream history. And now you're about to get the full story.
It was late at night. I wish I remembered what day of the week it was. I always feel like I want to say Tuesday, but when you work at a place where you feel like you're there all the time, every day is Tuesday, like there's no difference between the days. I was there by myself. I shared an office with Andrew Rona. Andrew had left. We both didn't stay late every day. Sometimes we would stay late because Bob and Harvey would still be calling in really late at night. So I would just be there. Why not? And Bobby Cohen walked into my office with a thick fax in his hand and just said to me, I don't think this is for us. Maybe it's for you guys. And he handed me the fax, and it was Scary Movie by Kevin Williamson. And my initial reaction was, this is going to be some kind of stupid spoof, and we're not looking for that. I'm not interested in that. And that was 100% off the title. And also the font. Like he used a sort of a Halloween font that looked like dripping, the letters were dripping. And I wanted to leave. And I was like, you know what? If it's a spec, I should just read it, get a sense of what it is. If it's a stupid, jokey, hacky, jokey spoof, I'll know within a couple of pages, and then it's not that big of a deal. So I sat down and started reading it, and the writing was amazing. I mean, you just get sucked right into the writing. The story was really interesting with this phone calls and this voice saying stuff to her, and then the boyfriend out the window when she looks out there. And I was sucked in. I had to know what happened. And when she got killed, this is obviously Casey Becker, who's Drew Barrymore in the movie, I was in. I had to know what happened. So I finished the script. I just sat there and finished the script. And when I got to the end, two killers, you'd never seen that before. Reading the script, I had a lot of feeling of this is somehow supernatural. How could the killer be out the window, but also inside the house? How is he doing this? And I, was thinking, all right, Michael Myers and Jason, like, who knows how Michael Myers works? Jason is undead. What's the trick with this guy? And then it's not. It's just two teenagers, and it works because there's two of them. There's nothing supernatural about them. It explains why, like, you hit them in the head and run away, and you can actually sort of get away. And I was like, this is so good. The other thing that really hooked me about it, being completely honest, was that it was for teenagers. It was a teen movie. I always say John Hughes hadn't really been doing teen movies for a couple of years, and there weren't any. And this was a movie with fun, interesting, new Gen X-y type teenagers. And I was like, this would be great for us to have something in the teen market. I was so excited by this script that I called Bob Weinstein at home. He had told me if I ever read a script that blew my mind, call him, let him know immediately. And this is the only time I ever did that. So I called him. He was just like, hey, Richard, what's up? Which I was very happy about. He wasn't mad. I was calling him so late at night. And I said, these are my exact words. I never forgot this. I just read a script. If you don't want to make this, then I don't know what you're looking for. He laughed and said, well, I better read it then. So we got off the phone. I made a bunch of photocopies. The big secret always was, I learned this as Bob's assistant, never give him the original, because you're never going to see it again. So you always make a copy. So I made a bunch of copies, got in a cab, and went straight to his apartment, handed a copy to his doorman, and went home. And then, do you want me to keep going with this?
Yeah.
Okay. I went home, got up the following morning. I was supposed to meet him, I think somewhere midtown, at a screening room to screen a movie called Hidden Assassin, which is a Dolph Lundgren movie, which may not sound super exciting in 2021, but at the time, Dolph Lundgren, was an action star. I mean, he had broken out in the Rocky movies, people running around going, I must destroy the American Rocky Balboa. And he was in this movie. Bob and I were alone in the screening room watching it. He turned to me just a few minutes into the screening, because I had asked him when we sat down if he had read the script. He said no. During the screening, he turns to me and says, is it really that good? And I said, it's the best spec that I've ever read. He said, okay, you finish watching this, I'll go read it. So he picked up his briefcase and walked out. So I leave the screening. I'm in the car. My cell phone rings. I pull out my little, probably StarTech flip phone back then. And he just says, I'm about halfway through. Is the whole thing like this, or does it fall apart? And I said, the whole thing's like that. And he said, okay, let's get it. Get the agent on the phone. And I had to remind him, though obviously he's not stupid, he knew this, but I reminded him, LA's not open yet. There's no one for us to call. He just said, get Kathy Conrad, let her know we're going to buy this. I went down to the office, handed out the copies of the script to the appropriate people so that they would all be ready, and just sat down to write the coverage. So I remember thinking in my head, normally we would send out coverage, there were readers that get paid to do coverage. And I just kept thinking to myself, if we're going to buy the script today, we're going to need the coverage today. So I sat down and I started writing the coverage.
What does that mean, the coverage?
Coverage is sort of like a report on the script. The assumption is executives get tons of scripts every day and they can't read all of them. This is the assumption. This is not the reality. And so someone does coverage. It gives a brief synopsis of the script. It gives a log line of 1 or 2 lines. It's about this. it gives us a like 1 or 2 page synopsis of what happens in the script, and then 1 or 2 pages of comments. And then the reader actually says they rate the writing, they rate the story, and they say pass, consider, or recommend. I'm going to say more than 90% of scripts get a pass. They're just, maybe it's just not for your company. Maybe it's just really bad. Or maybe there's 5 movies like that being made right now and there's no reason to make this. A good script will usually get a consider, like you should read this, you should consider this. It's worth thinking about. And very, very rarely does a script get a recommend. Recommend is the reader saying, you need to read the script right now. You need to make this movie. I think this movie is so great. Now, the thing to understand about readers is, one, they are crucial to the business. Finding good readers is not easy. I was the head of the Dimension Story Department and was responsible for the readers. And one of the issues with readers is a lot of readers are writers very early in their careers, when you're still in that late teens, early 20s college thing of, I'm not just going to tell you what this script is about. I'm just going to tell you why everything is wrong with it because I'm a genius and the person who wrote this is not. We were all that person, I think, at that age. What I did find was that people who read the script and saw it as a horror movie with some laughs in it, loved it. People who saw it as a dark comedy or a parody with some scares in it always passed. So it shows you how people's, it's like reading the tone in an email or in a text.
Yeah.
The tone that you read it with tells you what you're going to think of it.
And your state of mind at that point is obviously going to play a big part as well. Because,
Yes.
It's the same when you read a novel that 10 of your friends have really liked and you just don't get it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Also, like by that point, it's never going to be as good after everyone has told you how great it is.
Yeah.
And
because you also want to be the person that discovers it to a certain extent, don't you?
Yes. It's always more fun to be like that. I was the first one.
Hence why we're here.
But I'll tell you, it's actually scary to be the first one. In this case, because I'm lucky Bob read it and liked it himself. And at the end of the day, none of this happens if he doesn't like it. Just because I liked it, he may have, he could have just called me and said, "You're an idiot. This script is terrible." But the scary thing of being the person pushing this particular kind of boulder up the hill is, if you're wrong, a lot of money is gone. Mm-hmm. Like you're not talking about, even like the $400,000 for the script. I mean, the movie ended up being budgeted at like $14 million. Like that's a lot of money to be responsible for being wrong about.
Was that the most amount that Dimension had spent on anything at that point?
Probably at that point, because we really hadn't made very much. Most of what we had done was acquired finished films and fixed them. Mm-hmm. Fixing them usually meaning enhancing them. Like I don't want to take a shit on any of those filmmakers. Yeah. But like their movies were going to be direct-to-video titles. There was nothing theatrical about them. They didn't quite work. And we would give notes or notes to re-edit, even sometimes pay for reshoots to get a better scene or a better version or add some scenes and turn them into theatrical movies. I mean, 2 of them that ended up becoming pretty big for us were Hellraiser 4 became Hellraiser Bloodline. A lot of editing and mostly editing of that movie, re-editing it, changing it from being a linear movie to a non-linear story, and some new effects and a couple of new scenes. And then the other one was a direct-to-video title called God's Army that similarly made non-linear, a bunch of reshoots, a ton of new special effects, and that ended up getting the title changed and coming out as The Prophecy with Christopher Walken and Eric Stoltz. And that movie set a record for its opening weekend when it came out. I think it was Labor Day in the United States. It set the record for a Labor Day opening. And the truth is, the original cut of that movie maybe because of the actors, it would have done reasonably well in a video store, but it ended up becoming a franchise for us. We made 2 more Prophecy movies because that was so popular.
At this point, I mentioned to Richard that I remember the first time I saw the Dimension Films logo before the trailer for a movie called Mimic, and made the connection between seeing that with Scream.
I'm very happy to hear that. One of the things I was really trying to do early on in Dimension was I looked at the fact that when you saw a trailer for a drama and it was Miramax, people had a reaction. They knew it was going to be good. Yeah, it was going to be The English Patient, or a little bit later, Shakespeare in Love.
Mm-hmm.
At the time was My Left Foot, and all these, movies that like Sex, Lies, and Videotape that like they all had an impact. I think the big one around the time of this was The Crying Game. They always had some kind of impact. And I wanted it to be that if you saw the Dimension logo, you went, oh, this is going to be good. I wanted it to be that if Alfred Hitchcock was working today, he'd be doing it at Dimension.
Yeah.
And we talked about the fact that most Alfred Hitchcock movies, and this sounds hard to believe, were not financially successful, but they're great. And like, I always laugh, look at the reviews of a movie like Vertigo when it came out versus how it's viewed now. Look at the reviews of all of those movies that we think of as classics and how they were reacted to when they came out. I was like, I want them to be great. I want them to be movies that people are talking about afterwards, because the money will come. And the truth is, even more, or not, I shouldn't say even more so, but just like today, you expect the life of your movie back then is really going to be home video. You want to make money theatrically. You get a better video distribution deal back then if the movie made money in the theaters. So you want the movie to do well, but that means people will rent it a lot and buy it a lot when it comes out.
Yeah.
So we wanted Scream to do well. You think the life of it is going to be home video. Mimic, is interesting that you say that. It did well in the theaters, but then I think Entertainment Weekly used to do this thing where they would ask actors, what book do you have on your nightstand? What movie are you watching right now? And I think Brent Spiner might have been from Star Trek had said that Mimic was in his VCR or his DVD player, whatever it would have been during that time, and it suddenly sales went up. Yeah, well, you know what? It gives it the nod of legitimacy when someone that you likes it. When Scream hit the rental window, and you could finally go to a store and rent it, it was still in the theaters here. It just wouldn't die.
So was that something that you wouldn't be able to push back just because of contracts at that point, or was a natural kind of time frame with that? Normally,
like just sort of a little bit like nowadays, if a movie's in the theater for 2 weeks, you're like, oh my God, it must be a huge success. But back then, you kind of were hoping your movie would stick for, let's say, 4 weeks in the theater, and then 2 or 3 months later, it would come out on video.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that Scream was still in the theaters and we hit the rental window was shocking, because the movie should have been played out and done.
Yeah.
And then we kind of figured, well, now that it's for rental, ticket sales are going to go down. You can go rent it, see it whenever you want. And they didn't. The movie's renting like gangbusters, and it's still making, around $6 million a week in the theater, which is what it did when it opened. And you're like, it's just not dropping. And it was still in the theaters after the rental window in the States when it hit sell-through. So now you could rent it, you could buy it, but they're still going to the theater. But they're also renting it and they're also buying it.
Yeah.
And as we got towards the end of that summer, they had to make a decision to pull the movie because Scream 2's about to come out.
I was going to say that would have been done in post-production by that point.
Yeah, like we were, like, what do we do? So they pulled it, and then again, and then I think there were special Halloween screenings, or maybe it was midnight screenings, or maybe in October of Scream. It was back in the theaters for midnight screenings, I think. Or was it just Halloween? I'm going to, for the sake of making a decision, I'm going to say it was midnight screenings.
Yeah.
But the special thing about it was going to have the trailer for Scream 2 on it.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
initially, because if you wanted to see the trailer for Scream 2, you had to go see Scream again. And of course, people went and they saw the trailer for Scream 2. And two months later, Scream 2 came out.
It's funny because you'll have this when something affects you or impresses you so much, you associate it with what you were doing, obviously, in life, but also kind of that time of year. So the interesting kind of American take is, I guess, the Christmas memories or that feeling of the festive season for 1 and 2. But over here, there were springtime releases. So for me, Woodsboro, the feeling of Woodsboro is very spring-like, and the college campus is very spring-like as well. So,
but isn't that more what it looks like in the movie?
Yeah, exactly. That's
yes. I was going to say, but your point of view, your memory of it actually matches what you see in the movie. You know, you walk through the snow into the theater and then see these people running around in the woods, and it's, you know, it's funny. Your memory probably links up more viscerally with what you saw in a certain way. You know, yours is better. You know, because I think when you walk out of a movie like that into the atmosphere that they were just in, it stays with you a few beats longer, maybe till you actually get home, than, you know, putting your coat and your hat on, wrapping yourself up in a scarf and stepping out into, like, you know, the wind's whipping down the streets in New York City. Well, let me ask you a question then. These movies here, they always aim, prior to Scream and the Christmas thing, they always aimed for a Halloween-ish release, which really is mid-September, because you want your movie out before Halloween.
Yeah.
Because, you know, as soon as Halloween hits, it's going to be all Thanksgiving and Christmas movies. What was it like there when all of your horror movies are coming out in the spring?
Obviously, now we fall in line kind of with America much easier. But if you take Halloween H2O, that came out in August for Americans.
Yeah, it may have. I don't remember the release. Could be.
But we got that at Halloween. So that was kind of maybe the first time because of that international window that had changed. Because you wouldn't necessarily automatically class Scream as a Halloween film.
Well, just because it's scary now, people see it that way.
Yeah, and because there's a costume associated with it.
Every time a kid in a Scream costume comes to the door, my wife is like, "Did you say something to him?" I'm like, "The 12-year-old's not going to care."
That'd be so good. They'd be like, "What are you on about?" I don't care.
You know what I did? I was the executive in charge of production. I found that script. Took a treat, like, okay, whatever, I'm 8. You know.
Did you have a ghost face? Do you have an original ghost face?
I did. I don't have it anymore. I threw it away.
Oh, dear.
Because, you ready for this? Jamie Kennedy was at my house in New York City, my apartment. The phone rang. I wasn't in the apartment at the time. It was my father calling. I don't know why Jamie answered the phone, but he grabbed a permanent Sharpie and wrote the message on the Scream mask. It wasn't one from the movie. It was just that original company that made them. Like, you know, as soon as the movie came out, I was like, I saw one in a store. It wasn't called Scream Mask at the time. It was called whatever it was called at the time. So I grabbed one. I was like, this will be fun to have. And then I never replaced it. But it was not one from the movies. It was one from the movies. I would have, you know, I'd be in prison right now for having killed him. I couldn't believe he did that. I was just like, you know, on the one hand, it's kind of funny. But on the other hand, it's like, why would you write on this? I would be happy if you wrote on my coffee table. You know, at least I could sand it off. Like, there's no way it's Sharpie on that plastic. Like, it's not only is it not coming off, but it's already bleeding in. Like,
yeah.
We've got distracted. It's a good thing though, right? Let's get back on track and back to buying that script.
And so we make the call right as LA is open. So you got to imagine walking into your office. It's first thing in the morning. You pick up the phone, or in this case, you know, it is Hollywood. The assistant picks up the phone. You're sitting at your office. You know, most things in Hollywood don't start at the beginning. So, like, if you walked in at 9 a.m., your day is probably really starting between 9:30 and 10. Not actually at 9 o'clock. So Kevin's agent comes in, sits at his desk. Almost immediately, it's his assistant saying Bob Weinstein's on the phone. So I'm sure like he has no idea what this is going to be. And, you know, a lot of times when Bob and Harvey are calling, you know, they would be dropping the hammer on someone. So I'm sure he had a thought at 9 o'clock in the morning, first thing, what's this call going to be? And it's Bob saying, we read the script, we want to buy it. And the agent telling us, you know, we're super excited about this script too. So, and Bob saying, okay, we want to make an offer. And the agent was saying, and by the on the call, it's from our side, it's Bob, me, and Kathy Conrad, and the agent on the other side. And the agent says, well, Bob, it's first thing in the morning, you know, we've got to let some other people respond. And the understanding in that case, and he, I think, actually said this is, you've got to protect relationships. So someone else at a company in LA who read the script last night and is talking to their boss about it this morning at 9 a.m., if their boss gets excited, doesn't want to call and find out it's sold 5 minutes ago, that you never even had a chance. So the agent was like, we have to at least let other people respond. The key here to understand is the time difference that we always tried to use to our advantage. The fact that it was 3 hours earlier in New York. So when I'm reading the script, LA got it earlier. If Bobby Cohen gave me the script at 9 p.m. in New York, that was 6 p.m. in Los Angeles. But that doesn't mean that anybody just stopped what they were doing and read it like I did. So by 10:15, I've already spoken to Bob, which is 7:15 in Los Angeles, and most people who are bringing the script home still haven't read it yet. By the time I'm meeting Bob in the morning at 8 a.m. for this screening, Los Angeles probably hasn't woken up yet at 5 a.m. to read the script. If they haven't read it yet, or if they think the same kind of thing I did, this is not going to be a hot spec. You know, it's a spoofy horror movie in a time when the genre was basically dead in the early 90s. So no one's clamoring for this. So the fact that I had read it, gotten it to Bob, he had read it before, you know, later than I wanted him to, but still before LA opened, we're ahead of the game. So the agent has got to be like, I've got to give people another chance to read it. And Bob is saying, Dimension wants to buy this movie. How do I do that? And the agent tells us, Kevin's out of town. I can't reach him. And I remember Bob saying, and we all had the thought at the same time. I'm sure as it came out of the agent's mouth, he regretted saying this. But Bob said to him, I still can hear Bob saying this in my head, just the level of disbelief in his voice as he said, you're telling me you took out a spec, but you can't reach your client if you get an offer? And the agent just said he was really nervous or he was scared or something like that. Bob said, you know, we want to buy this. Tell me how to buy this. And the agent said, I have to give other people a chance. Bob says, I want to buy this script. You know, what number are you looking for? What are you guys looking for to sell this? What takes it off the table? And the agent keeps saying, I have to talk to my client. So Bob does something that since this story came out, some of my former Miramax and Dimension colleagues have reached out to me laughing about this tactic. Bob says, the agent says, I've got to talk to my client. I don't know if I can reach him. So Bob says, Richard, what are you doing right now? And I said, whatever you need me to do, Bob. And he says, Kathy, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm here. So Bob says to the agent, we can hold on. And the agent goes, it's like, what? And Bob goes, call your client. We'll hold on. And the agent goes, I don't know how long that'll take. Oh, and that's when Bob says, what are you doing right now and all that. And he goes, okay, we can hold on. Just put us on hold and call your client. Bob says, put us on hold, call your client. And the agent says, I can't do that. Because Bob was kind of making a point, we'll just be on hold all day. The agent says he can't do that. So Bob says, give me a number. What takes it off the table? And the agent says, I don't know, Bob, $1 million. So Bob goes, so if I say $1 million, we get the script. And I always say this with Bob Weinstein, don't call his bluff. And the agent starts waffling about that because, he has to let other people respond and blah, blah, blah. And while he's saying that, Bob says, okay, yes, $1 million. Do we have it? And the agent says no. And Bob just lays it out there. He says, okay, then I want to be clear. This offer is only good while we're on the phone. If we hang up, there is no $1 million offer from Dimension. I don't want to hear that you're letting word out that we've made $1 million offer to create a bidding war. If anyone calls and checks to see if we have $1 million offer, we're going to tell them no. If we get off the phone, there's no $1 million offer. And we ended up getting off the phone and then buying the script for $400,000.
Would he have paid it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, if he had said yes, and then ultimately, there was a bidding war. Other places offered more money, certainly more than we were initially offering at that point. We never got close to $1 million again. Kevin wasn't sure where to go, and he had a great lawyer. I don't know if she still is a lawyer, but she's a great lawyer. And I say that as someone who great wasn't the word I would have used when I was on the other side of the table from her. She's great for her clients. She's the kind of lawyer you want for your client if you're her client, but you really feel beaten up afterwards when you're on the other side of the table. But I guess, if you're her client, that's what you want. Mm-hmm. Her name is Patty Felker, and she deserves full credit for this. Kevin asked her what she thought he should do. And she said to him, other places will pay you more money. Dimension will make your movie. You have to decide which is more important to you. And obviously he decided he wanted his movie made, which led to obviously a lot more money than the $1 million. And a hugely successful career for one of the major writing talents in this business. I mean, Kevin is absolutely one of the best.
And that is how Scream was sold. But we're not done there. Next time, the full story on getting Wes Craven on board.
He had done horror movies, he had done slasher movies, and he felt with Freddy's New Nightmare that he'd sort of already done what became known as the meta thing.
Could Kevin Williamson have directed the movie himself?
We actually said we would have him, if he wanted, shoot a test scene to see how he would direct it. And he shot it.
And Drew Barrymore's big decision from the inside.
Like I thought, I'm going to get to do this movie. It's a Drew Barrymore movie with Wes Craven. It's going to be amazing. And then you start to think about what she said and you go, if she dies at the beginning, anyone could die. Mm-hmm. And you go, that's brilliant.
All in the next episode of the Woodsboro podcast, where my chat with Richard Potter continues. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Woodsboro podcast. Please rate and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you'd like to join the conversation, then you can find more on social media at the Woodsboro Pod. And you can find me on social media too at This Is Alex James.